My fiancée cheated and said I'd never find someone like her. A year later, I'm dating a model who had a crush on me since high school. So, when I was scrolling through Reddit the other day, I came across a post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him and didn't care. She was absolutely honest about it, as if it were no big deal. It was insane, and it made me think about my ex-girlfriend. I haven't told many people about this incident, mostly because it's long and, well, it was unpleasant at the time. But after reading that post, I thought, what the heck, I might as well share my story. Keep in mind that this occurred approximately 2 years ago. I met my ex, let's call her Chloe, through a dating app. It wasn't one of those apps for quick hookups, it was one of the more serious ones, where people were reportedly looking for relationships. At the time, I was 33, and she was 30. We matched, chatted, and there was an instant connection. It's hard to explain, but we just understood each other. We shared the same sense of humor, interests, and could talk for hours without getting bored. It was very refreshing. After a few weeks of online and phone conversations, I eventually invited her out on an actual date. I was a little nervous, to be honest, because she was so lovely, breathtakingly stunning. I'm not suggesting I'm a troll or anything. I think I'm a decent-looking guy. But she was clearly in a different league. I remember thinking at the time that I probably wouldn't be looking for anything serious with her because, girls like that usually have a lot of options. I didn't want to have my heart broken. Being with someone who's overly attractive is a strange problem, I know, but it can come with its own set of challenges. Anyway, she agreed to the date, and we had a great time. It just validated everything I felt during our online conversations. We started seeing each other more frequently after that, and it became official very quickly. One thing that was continually on my mind was how much attention she received from other men. She would tell me about it occasionally. Even when we were together, a guy would shamelessly hit on her in front of me, or she'd receive messages from guys via social media. At first, I wasn't concerned by it. I trusted her. I got the impression that she wasn't interested in anyone else and was truly interested in me. Not smart, I know, but that's how I felt at the moment. I was simply enjoying being with her, and I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure lover. Things were going great, really great, except for one tiny thing that kept lingering in my mind. We were having one of those crazy late-night chats where you talk about random things, and the subject of hall passes came up. If you're not familiar with the term, it refers to a hypothetical situation in which you and your partner each get to choose one celebrity with whom you would be allowed to sleep, no questions asked. It's meant to be a bit of fun, but it can occasionally expose some underlying sentiments. Anyway, she brought it up, which struck me as weird. Usually, I'm the one who initiates such silly chats. She said her hall pass was Justin Timberlake, which is fair enough, he's a good-looking guy. But then she said something that really resonated with me. She added, I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me, with a slight smirk, as if she was entirely serious. Now, I knew she was beautiful, I had always known that. But hearing her say it in that way just rubbed me the wrong way. She seemed to be accepting that she could have pretty much any guy she wanted, which made me uneasy. It seemed out of character for her too. Despite her outward appearance, she had always been quite approachable. It just felt arrogant. It made me feel uneasy. I said nothing at the moment, I just laughed it off, and we moved on to the next topic. But the comment lingered in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about it over the next few days. The feeling vanished, and things returned to normal, but I never forgot about it. The shift in her behavior. Things were going really well for a while after the hall pass chat, but then I noticed a shift in her behavior. It was faint at first, but as time passed, it grew increasingly clear. She began arriving home later than usual. Normally, she'd arrive home from work around 6 p.m., but she started arriving at 7 p.m., maybe 7:30, or even later. And her excuses? They were basically lame. She'd say things like, oh, I just lost track of time, or, I ran into a friend, and we chatted for a bit. It was strange because she used to be so thorough about her day. If she was late due to work, she'd tell me everything, what project she was working on, who she spoke with, and so on. Now, it was just these vague, meaningless reasons. On top of that, she became quite irritable if I inquired why she was late. She'd snap at me, becoming defensive, claiming I was being overly controlling or that I didn't trust her. I didn't want to fight, so I usually backed away. I'm not a confrontational person, especially when someone is already in a foul mood. However, the late nights persisted, as did the nebulous reasons. My suspicion began to deepen. It was like a small voice in the back of my head saying, something's not right here. I tried to ignore it, but it became increasingly difficult. Confrontations and denials. Finally, I asked her if there was anything wrong. I said, is everything okay? You seem different lately. She denied it, of course. She responded, no, everything's fine, I'm just stressed with work, the usual. I wanted to believe her, I actually did. A few days passed, and the same things happened. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I told her again that her behavior was unusual and that I was concerned. This time, she seemed to understand what I was saying. She apologized, claiming that it was all due to stress and exhaustion and insisting that it was nothing personal. I got what she was saying, but I couldn't bring myself to believe it. After that chat, things appeared to improve, at least on the surface. She was more receptive and conversational when she got home late. She'd tell me stories about what she'd been doing, but they just felt hollow. There was something about the way she told them, the lack of detail, the avoidance of eye contact, that didn't feel right. I remember one particular night when she arrived home late and told me a story about running into an old coworker and having drinks with him. I knew she was lying. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I can't describe it, but I got the overwhelming impression that she was hiding something really important. And that's when the thought occurred to me. She was having an affair. It wasn't just a minor issue or misunderstanding, this was a full-blown affair. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I needed to discover the truth, one way or another. Her behavior had shifted dramatically from the woman I first met. It was impossible to ignore. This was not the person I had fallen for. Something was clearly wrong, and I was determined to find out what it was. The plan. Okay, so I'm sitting there, convinced that my girlfriend is cheating on me. My initial thought was, I need to check her phone. I mean, that's where all the proof should be, right? Text messages, emails, social media, everything. But I quickly realized it wouldn't work. First and foremost, she was always on her phone, making it nearly impossible to take it away long enough to conduct a thorough search. Even if I did manage to get it, I'm not exactly a tech expert. I wouldn't know where or what to look for, and she'd probably deleted anything anyway. Plus, I needed solid proof. I didn't want to find a questionable text message and then confront her with it. I wanted to catch her in the act, to know without a doubt. So, I decided to take a different approach. I hired a private investigator. Yeah, I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but I was desperate. I needed the truth, and I wanted someone who knew what they were doing to help me find it. I wanted to know who this guy was and where they were meeting. I conducted a Google search for private investigators in my area and found one with positive reviews. I contacted them and scheduled a meeting. I remember being quite nervous when I walked into their office. It felt like I was admitting defeat. I sat down with the investigator, a guy who appeared to have seen it all before, and told him everything. I recounted the entire story, from the hall pass conversation to the late nights and lame excuses. It took a while, but he just listened calmly and nodded. He made no judgments about me. He didn't make me feel foolish. He just listened. Then he said he'd seen this type of thing 100 times before. He suggested doing surveillance for 2 weeks because her late nights were irregular, but it would be somewhat costly. We ultimately agreed on 10 days. I gave him all her contact information, including her phone number, email address, and where she worked. Before I left, he told me not to contact him until the 10 days were up unless it was an emergency. It'll be difficult, he told me, but you need to let me do my job. I agreed. I knew it would be torment, but I had to trust him. The longest 10 days of my life. Those 10 days were among the longest of my life. It was awful knowing that this investigator was following my fiancée and could uncover proof that confirmed my darkest fears. I felt helpless, just waiting, wondering, and thinking about all kinds of possibilities. It was difficult to focus on anything else. Work was a nightmare. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. And the worst part? Throughout the 10 days, she consistently arrived home late. 3 times, she arrived home after 9 p.m., using the same tired, pathetic excuses. Oh, I had last-minute plans with some friends, or traffic was terrible. She had no idea that every time she said those things, it further confirmed my suspicions that she was lying. Each time she was late, I thought, okay, this is it. This is when the investigator will catch her. It just gave him more opportunities to get the evidence I needed. The truth comes out finally. The 10-day period ended. The investigator called me right on time. He didn't say much over the phone, just that he had the information I needed and asked if we could meet in person. I said yes, absolutely. This was something I needed to hear face to face. I couldn't bear hearing this kind of news over the phone. I had been waiting for what seemed like an eternity, and I needed to see his expression to know for certain that what he was telling me was true. I drove to his office, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt sick to my stomach when I walked in. He was sitting with a manila envelope on the desk in front of him. He motioned for me to sit down, then asked if I wanted him to simply explain what he discovered or if I wanted to examine the contents of the envelope myself. I said I wanted to hear it from him first. I thought it would soften me a little. In my mind, I compared it to walking in on your partner cheating and having a moment to brace yourself before the gut punch. He took a deep breath and said, "Your suspicions were correct." Just like that. There was no avoiding the issue, no sugarcoating it. He informed me that he had followed her to an apartment building 3 times. She went in alone and left about 2 hours later, always with the same man. He had obtained the apartment number and the individual's name, Cody. Obviously, I'm changing the name. To be honest, my initial thought was that I wanted to find this Cody person and, let's just say, I wasn't thinking peacefully. But then I realized that wasn't the point. The point was that my girlfriend, the woman I loved, had betrayed me. That's what I needed to focus on. The investigator slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it, and there they were. Pictures. Photos of her and this Cody guy in front of the apartment building, embracing, holding hands, kissing in front of her car. Everything was there in black and white, undeniable proof. I almost lost it. I almost broke down right there in his office. It was one thing to suspect something, to have a gut instinct, but seeing it with my own eyes was a completely different experience. The visual evidence was overwhelming. I managed to hold back tears, though it was difficult. It wasn't just the affair, it was the realization that my entire life, the future I had planned with her, was falling apart in front of me. The confrontation, I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew I had to confront her. When I arrived home, I asked her to sit down. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I said quietly, "We need to talk." She knew something was off. She could see it on my face. She sat down, and I laid everything out. I told her I knew about the affair. I told her I'd hired a private investigator. I told her that I had proof. Her first reaction was shock. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. Then she tried to calm down, to act as if nothing had happened, but I wasn't having it. I told her what the investigator had told me, about the apartment building, about Cody, everything. And she just sat there, silent. She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She didn't even try to explain. She just sat there listening. The more I talked, the angrier I became. Her silence was infuriating. She didn't seem to care or be sorry for what she'd done. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I wanted to break up. I said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep playing this song and dance, I'm done." And then she did something completely unexpected. She laughed. She stood up, as if to intimidate me, and launched into this full monologue. "You want to leave me?" she asked. "Are you kidding? So what?" I had a little bit of excitement on the side. It was just physical. It didn't mean anything. "I'm a cheater, fair. But where do you think you'll go from here? Do you think you'll ever find someone like me again? Hasn't it been clear to you over the years that I'm out of your league? It was one time. Is that what you want to destroy our lives over?" She went on in that vein, essentially trying to make me feel lucky that I should just be grateful to be with her, even if she cheated. Can you believe it? I was stunned. I knew she was arrogant, I knew she thought highly of herself. But this was a whole new level. This wasn't a sincere apology. This was hardly the reaction of someone who had been caught and wanted to make amends. This was the response of someone who didn't give a someone with a genuine sense of entitlement. It seemed as if her ideal scenario was for me to simply accept that she was too good for me, that she would do whatever she pleased, and that I should be content to be along for the ride. She honestly believed I wouldn't have the courage to leave. That's how proud she was of herself. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had felt chianti and angry before, but this was different. This was pure fury. I had never felt anything like it. I stood up, looked her directly in the eyes, and told her how much I despised her. I don't remember the exact words, but they were along those lines. And then I walked out. I didn't grab a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out the door. I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her for another second. I felt completely betrayed. It was over. The aftermath, I ended up staying the night in a cheap motel. I couldn't go back to the house, not yet. I just needed to be alone and process everything that had happened. I lay there in that uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation in my mind over and over. I couldn't believe the way she had reacted. It was just unbelievable. The next day, I returned to the house to get some of my belongings. I assumed she would be at work, but she was there. She looked like she had been crying, but she was trying to play tough, as if nothing was wrong. And then, get this. She had the nerve to say, "I knew you'd be back," with a smug little grin on her face, as if I had just thrown a small tantrum and crawled back to her. I didn't say anything. I just went inside, grabbed some clothes, toiletries, and other essentials. I knew I couldn't get everything at once, but all I wanted was to get out of there as quickly as possible. I said, "I'll be back for the rest of my stuff later." She just stood there, staring at me, her face filled with disbelief, as if she couldn't believe I was actually leaving. She didn't say anything until I was walking out the door. Then she just whispered something under her breath, which I didn't catch, and frankly, I didn't care. I've been trying to understand why she acted the way she did. I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around it. Maybe she was looking for validation or excitement outside of our relationship. Maybe she was insecure about getting older or about our routine. Maybe she saw me as a safe, dependable partner but also as someone she considered beneath her. And maybe, because she had always felt that way, she didn't see the infidelity as a big deal. She had already rationalized it in her mind. Of course, all of this is just me guessing, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Moving on after I left, she started contacting me. The first few messages were mocking and caustic, as if she thought the whole thing was a joke and that I would just run back to her. She definitely believed I was bluffing, that I wouldn't go through with leaving. But a few days later, I returned to the house with a friend to get the rest of my belongings, and she was shocked. She couldn't believe I was being serious. I think that was the moment she realized it was truly over. One of her final texts to me read, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." Seriously? I blocked her after that. I couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. A new beginning. Let's skip ahead a bit. The whole breakup with Chloe was a mess, and it took me a while to get my bearings, but life goes on, right? A few months later, I had my 15-year high school reunion. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but a few of my friends convinced me. It ended up being a great time. It was nice to see all the old faces and catch up with people I hadn't seen in years. Just a really upbeat, enjoyable vibe. And then there was Veronica. Veronica was in my high school class. She was a tall, stunningly beautiful girl. We were friendly and had some classes together, but we weren't particularly close. She was one of those girls who was just naturally cool, you know? After high school, she became a model, a pretty successful one at that. I had seen her in some magazines and online ads. If you're into fashion, you might recognize her name. I hadn't spoken to her in at least 7 years, maybe more. So, I'm at the reunion, having a nice time, when I realize that Veronica isn't there. However, her best friend from high school was. They were still really close, which I thought was great. It showed that Veronica hadn't changed much despite her success. I went over to her friend just to say hello and catch up. We were talking, and she had this big smile on her face the whole time. When I mentioned Veronica, her smile grew even wider. She made a face and said, "I know she's going to call me for telling you this, but you know she's always had a crush on you." I just chuckled. I mean, come on, Veronica, a successful model, had a crush on me? It seemed utterly ridiculous. Even in high school, we didn't run in the same circles. We were friendly, but nothing more. There was no way. And now, with her being a model, no chance. It was flattering, of course, to think that someone like her would find me attractive, but I assumed it was just a high school thing that she'd long forgotten about. I told her friend that I didn't think Veronica remembered me, but she insisted. She explained that Veronica had asked her to check me out at the reunion to see if I still looked as good as I did in high school. And then she said, "She's still into you. So, if you're single and you're not scared of girls with baggage, you might as well give it a shot." I spent the rest of the night thinking about that conversation. It was all so unexpected. I won't lie. It felt amazing to know that someone like Veronica was interested in me, especially after what had happened with Chloe. It felt like here was this woman who my ex would have deemed out of my league, and she was allegedly crushing on me. It made me realize how empty Chloe's words were and how much she had tried to bring me down. It gave me a huge confidence boost. Taking a chance. After the reunion, I decided to take a chance. I figured, what do I have to lose? I decided to reach out to Veronica online, as the kids say. I found her on Instagram and sent her a message. I also let Veronica's friend know that I was going to message her, in case she didn't check her DMs from people she didn't follow. I didn't want my message to get lost in the mix. And then I waited. And waited. And waited. 5 days went by, and I heard nothing. I had pretty much forgotten about it, to be honest. I figured she was probably busy or that her friend had exaggerated things. I wasn't too concerned about it. But eventually, she replied, and her message was pretty enthusiastic. She wrote, "Oh my gosh, Keith, it's been so long. Now, I've heard that the more letters a woman repeats in her text to you, the more she likes you. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it felt like a good sign." We started messaging back and forth, catching up on pretty much everything. We talked about high school, what we'd been up to since then, our jobs, our families, everything. After a few days, Veronica suggested we switch to FaceTime. She said she was tired of typing so much. I was thrilled, of course, and we started video chatting almost every day. A deeper connection. During those video calls, I started to learn more about her life as a model. She told me everything about the industry, the travel, the photo shoots, the ups and downs. She was in Brussels at the time, working on a campaign, and even sent me some behind-the-scenes photos from the set. It was fascinating, and it was awesome to see her in her element. It also allowed us to connect on a deeper level, even though we were thousands of miles apart. After a few weeks of almost daily communication, it started to feel like we were dating. We hadn't officially called it that, but it seemed like more than just friendship. So I decided to be a little corny and just ask her, "What are we?" She chuckled and said we were really great friends, but she wanted to be more. I took that as a cue and asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She agreed without hesitation. It was a wonderful feeling. The long-distance challenge. Obviously, the long-distance aspect was challenging. She was a model, traveling the world, while I was here doing my regular job. I had been in a long-distance relationship when I was younger, and I hated it. It was hard to maintain that connection, to feel like you were truly a part of each other's lives. But this was different. This was Veronica, and she was already so important to me that I was willing to do whatever it took to make it work. So, I booked a flight to Brussels to see her. She was going to be there for a few weeks, working on a project, so I decided it was the perfect time to visit her and get a taste of her world. The trip that changed everything. The trip was incredible. Brussels was beautiful, of course, but being there with Veronica was something else. It felt like a dream come true. It taught me that I shouldn't give up on love because of one bad experience. That there are still good people out there, people worth the effort. She even brought me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element, cheer her on from the sidelines, and take some of my own photos. It was so amazing to see her doing what she loved, and it made me feel even more connected to her, like I was truly a part of her life. The Instagram mishap. She didn't respond right away. I could see the little typing indicator appear and disappear several times over the next 10 minutes, as if she was writing something, deleting it, and then writing something new. Finally, she just sent a snarky message. Sure. The final goodbye. That's when I decided to go for it. I told her, "You don't have to believe me." Then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also asked her, "How's your man from back then doing?" I knew it would sting. She read the message but didn't respond. And then I blocked her on Instagram. I realized it was probably petty of me to say those things, but honestly, I felt like she deserved it. I didn't want her to have any further access to my life or any more opportunities to get under my skin. Still, I'll admit that I was curious about her reaction. Happily ever after, and that, my friends, concludes the story. It's been quite a journey, to say the least, but I can honestly say that I'm happier than I've ever been. Veronica and I have been happily dating ever since our trip to Brussels, and I won't lie, I'm thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her though. Veronica is a true blessing in my life. She's kind, funny, intelligent, and stunning, both inside and out. She makes me feel like the luckiest man in the world. I'm so glad things didn't work out with Chloe, because if they had, I never would have met Veronica. I know some people might criticize me, saying things like, "Oh, he's only with her because she's a model," or "long distance never works." But I don't care. I refuse to let anyone's negativity ruin my relationship with Veronica. She's amazing, and I'm incredibly happy. If things don't work out, you can come back here and tell me, "I told you so." But God knows, I don't see myself writing another post like this anytime soon. So, that's it. That's my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and eventually finding love and happiness in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening, or reading, I suppose. Thank you for watching.